According to the National Retail Federation, Americans will spend $6.9 billion on Halloween purchases this year. That makes it the second largest retail holiday after Christmas. Clearly, Halloween creates a thriving seasonal economy. There's much more to the holiday than the commercial aspect. Halloween strikes a chord with many religious groups, and it's caused lots of controversy. Halloween also has deeply seated roots in tradition. In order to understand how Halloween has come to be and how it's changed over the years, you must examine the holiday as it was prior to the 1800s, from the 1800s to the 1930s, and from the 1930s until now. According to HistoryChannel.com, Halloween was started in 500 BC by the Celts as the Samhain Festival. It was celebrated on November 1st, and the Celts believed on the eve of the festival, which was October 31st, the barrier between life and death was blurred. It was also meant to signify a change of seasons and that the festival season was over. The harvest season was over. The Celts believed at this time that the ghosts returned to the earth. They also thought that their priests were better able to predict the future because the veil was thinned. They celebrated this holiday by large bonfires. They also wore costumes that were made out of animal hides, and they sacrificed to the gods. Which gods they sacrificed to is the origin of the controversy with the religions. According to Halloween, while we celebrate it the way we do, a book by Martin and Kate Hintz, the Celtic version of Samhain was specifically meant to worship Samhain, god of the dead. However, ReligiousTolerance.org says that Samhain was an obscure god of the Celts, so he did exist, but he was not the god of the dead, nor was the festival dedicated to him. This distinction is important because if you believe that he was the god of the dead, then certain people then believe that he was a representation of Satan, and that would make Halloween a satanic holiday. However, if you don't believe that, then you think that it was just a holiday meant to signify the change of the season and that it did not have any religious connotation to the Celts. The debate still exists between different religious factions. ReligiousTolerance.org says that it's typically really conservative Christians and the Wiccan faith that still debate the topic, and that for most people it doesn't hold any kind of religious connotation. The first integration of Halloween with another holiday, which is how it started to evolve, was in 43 AD when Rome conquered the Celtic land. As was tradition for the Romans, they take something they already have in their society and they combine it with the ones that they've conquered. And they did this by combining the Samhain festival with their festival for Pomona, goddess of the fruit and trees. Her symbol was an apple, and the historians think that's how bobbing for apples came about, because it was a representation of the Roman goddess. So that's how we see that, conquering helped evolve Halloween. Next, we'll see how the church influenced it. In 1000 AD, Pope Gregory III took the holiday that already existed, Martyrs' Day, and combined it with the new holiday, All Saints' Day, and he decided that it would be celebrated on November 1st. HistoryChannel.com says that a lot of people think this was the church's first attempt to replace a non-religious holiday with a religious day. And so they decreed this, but mostly people, they took the things the church wanted, but they incorporated it with what they were already doing. So at this point, Halloween was celebrated via bonfires, like it still was back when the Celts started it, parades, and costumes. But now instead of wearing animal costumes, they'd wear costumes that looked like saints or angels or demons. This is really important because this is how Halloween got its name. It started as All Souls Day, and eventually it changed to All Hallows Day. And the evening before All Hallows Day was All Hallows Eve. And then eventually people started calling it Halloween. The next important chapter in how the holiday evolved occurred between the 1800s and the 1930s. This is when Halloween came to America. The first settlers that came to America, a lot of them are really strict Protestants, and they didn't believe in Halloween and didn't think it should be celebrated. But some of the settlers that settled in further southern colonies, they did bring Halloween with them. When Halloween really had a surge is whenever the second half of the 19th century, when a lot of immigrants came over. HistoryChannel.com specifically cites the Irish immigrants that were fleeing the potato famine of 1846 for helping to popularize Halloween. According to the University of Maryland, the Irish brought with them the original idea of trick-or-treating. Back in Ireland, when they would do trick-or-treating, it was when a group of villagers went from door to door and they would try to solicit food to help for a village feast. This transcended into our modern day trick-or-treating that we have now. Another tradition that the Irish brought with them was the idea of a jack-o'-lantern. And that started with a folklore about a man named Jack that tricked the devil into not taking his soul when he died. But it also meant that he couldn't go to heaven, so he was roaming around earth and it was dark. So he asked the devil for a coal or something so he could see. So the devil gave him a coal, but it was too hot for him to carry, so he put it in a carved out turnip. But turnips are much harder to carve than pumpkins, so pumpkins got substituted for that in the story, and that's how they brought jack-o'-lanterns with them. At this point, Halloween was celebrated via costumes still, but of a greater array. It was more than just angels and demons, and people would go door to door, but this time soliciting either food stuff because they were poor or money. In the late 1800s, there was a movement made to make the holiday more family-oriented, and there was also a push from society to eliminate some of the scary aspects of Halloween and also some of the religious aspects of Halloween. So a lot of the superstition and religion was done away with, and that's why most people now just see Halloween as dressing up as your favorite character to go collect candy. We no longer really associate it with a lot of the tradition that used to go with it. The final chapter in Halloween's changes in America is seen from the 1930s until now. In the 1930s, Halloween was celebrated very similar as to it is now. There was, however, a big increase in vandalism in the time that the holiday was celebrated. So to help do away with this, a lot of the community leaders and religious leaders refocused the holiday towards the very young. It was also in the 1930s that candy was held upon as the currency that people used for trick-or-treating. Eventually, we saw more involvement in the 1970s is when the sexualization of costumes started. That's when adults started to get more involved back in Halloween. And now it's celebrated by all age groups with any kind of costume you want and parties and trick-or-treating. While the current celebration of Halloween is uniquely American, every tradition in it can be traced back to another culture at another time. By examining how Halloween is celebrated before the 1800s, from the 1800s to the 1930s, and from the 1930s until now, we can see how Halloween has evolved and changed. Although for most, Halloween is a consumer holiday, it has a lot of tradition and history behind it. And that's just something to think about whenever you go trick-or-treating this year. Thank you.